Hello and welcome back to Grace and Grit. Today we've got a special artist with us who has collaborated on the film and dance project Rage. Lauren Baines is a choreographer and dancer who choreographed a piece based off of Professor Seeberger's book, The Irrelevance of Power. Hello Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi Sarah. Yeah, no, thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Of course. So I'll just get started with a few questions, if that's all right. The first one is, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved with this project and how you met with Cellista?
Sure. Let's see. Well, dance has always really been part of my life. So through mutual connections, I was introduced, Ray and I were introduced to one another. Oh, I'd have to go back and think exactly, but maybe 6 or so years ago. And someone had said, the two of you really need to meet, that your work probably would enjoy one another's, and it kind of started from there. And there was that initial project. But since then, Freya and I have collaborated a few times. And so with this particular project, she had reached out to me earlier in the summer, sharing a little bit about where she was wanting to go with the project and if I might want to be one of the participants. And I've really enjoyed working with her in the past and the opportunity to really bring my vision to the collaborations and how multiple disciplines really interweave. So I knew I would enjoy it, even if I didn't know everyone involved, and just kind of dove headfirst.
Right, yeah, and also, especially during the pandemic, being able to work on something individually too, even if you don't know the other collaborators, since you do have that history with Cellista.
Yes.
That's great. That's a really neat project. Now, so you're one of the choreographers. Did you receive a chapter from the book directly, or were you just given music that was previously composed from an excerpt?
I was given a piece of music, so I received the audio file without much detail about the composer or about the particular chapter. I was just given a prompt. And I assumed and later learned for sure that prompt really spoke to the chapter that the music was inspired by. Mm-hmm. And that line I was given and told I could interpret as I like, but the idea was to keep the exploited blind to their own common interest is of inestimable value to the exploiters.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting line. And I think too that, in a way, if you're not received the chapter, you can see so many different interpretations from different artists on that same chapter, which I think is kind of an interesting part of the process. Now, do you know who the artist was that you received the music for, or do you know like what instruments were used? Could you tell us a bit about the music?
Yeah, so I've not, to my knowledge, I've not met the composer before, and I know Freya has shared the name, and I feel terrible it's not coming to mind at the moment, but we have not worked together in the past. And the music really comes from a noise background, and so for me there was a lot of space within this soundscape. And so it wasn't necessarily that I was following certain rhythms or patterns. For me, it felt very much like this environment had been created that I was stepping into and responding to. That's kind of how I approached it, that there are some longer tones, and with that, like kind of allowing that to draw my attention, my energy, some of my extensions. And so really approached it almost as a tactile exercise, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Actually, you kind of just jumped onto my second question too about just how you've interpreted that music and how it's been able to kind of convey that music with your body, what expressions you're trying to convey. Also, too, what you were saying before, I think there is kind of a strong emphasis on all of these pieces that are just about noise. I've heard that word frequently used for the people that I've interviewed. So that's an interesting aspect. But, just now moving on to the last question, this is a very short interview, but I saw that you also majored in psychology, and you have a focus on the communication, the unconscious, identity. Do you think that these other interests of yours have been able to tie in with this project and its connection to philosophy?
I would say yes. So as an undergraduate, like you said, I studied psychology, also art history and dance. And for me, they all weave together of really understanding individuals, but also society, and where community comes together and where groups come together. My own interest in the unconscious and in communication has always, I think, been there, but just as I was studying psychology, just kind of giving words and theories to things that I was observing and wanting to explore further.
Mm-hmm.
In approaching this work, there was certainly some of that as well, and really thinking of how we operate within what we think is our reality, and that there's a story behind that. And some of the gestures were both inspired by the music, as I was describing a second ago, but also really through a subtle theory. I'm not saying by any means that I was drawing specifically from the same philosophy of the book, but just really thinking of how we may be given to believe that a certain action is in support of something, or that we give ourselves credit for something that we don't actually know the full story behind, things that are being concealed from us, but we don't even know that we're not seeing the full picture.
Right. Well, that sounds fascinating. I cannot wait to see this project, and especially your dance, which I think will be premiering October 15th.
It's right around the corner. Yes.
So soon. So I'm very excited to see that. Thank you so much for coming. Again, this is Lauren Baines, dancer and choreographer, who is working on the dance film project Rage, which will be coming out super soon. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.